Major funding for these programs is provided by HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, Greenberg Traurig LP, the Moynihan Group. Additional funding is provided by Antares Real Estate, Arbor Realty Trust, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Habitats, CUSHMAN and WAKEFIELD, Essex Capital Partners, Fremont Investment and Loan, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Must Development LLC, NEWMARK Knight Frank, PALIN Enterprises, Rosenthal and Rosenthal Inc., Signature Bank, Stonehenge Partners, Swig Equities, the Engel Berman Group, the WITKOFF Group, Titan Capital, YL Real Estate Developers.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller, the host of the Stoller Report, Real Estate Trends in the Tri-State Region. Everybody wants to develop. Everybody wants to be a developer. They want to own property. They want to build apartments. Everybody, that's you know, you're 25 years of age or 22, you want to do that. So today I assembled, with the exception of one, okay, I assembled this group of young developers. And even though Jeff Bennett is a little older, I assembled this group who's going to tell us what they're doing in development in New York City. My guests today include Jeff Bennett, who's a little older than the younger guys.
Thank you.
Principal at R&B Development. Matt Blesso, president of Blesso Properties. And last but not least, our youngest one over here, Michael Davis of KG Plymouth. So why did you become a developer? What brought you to become a developer of apartments? And what makes you a developer?
Well, I would hope that what makes one a developer is actually having worked on and built some projects, and together with my partners, we've been fortunate enough to have been visionary enough to find areas before they were priced out for us, and we're able to build some interesting projects in East Harlem and Upper Manhattan. But I guess what drove me to want to be a developer is when I was a very little boy, my family used to commute from West Hempstead to the city. And we used to pass the old Milburn Wire Factory site on 116th and the FDR. Washburn, my apologies. So Washburn Wire Factory site. And from the time I was a little kid, I'm like, you know, that doesn't make sense. That really ought to be something different. And sort of from that age onward, I always was looking at property with a bit of a different eye, trying to see what it could be redeveloped into and what potential any given property might have to be something greater than what was there when we started.
And what do you, and you're 33. You're what, 20?
26.
26. I was 1 year older. Okay, you're 33, you're 26, you're double his age, you're 52. But so what are you guys developing today? What are you building in the city of New York? I mean, Michael alluded to some of his things, and I'll get back to that in a second. What are you building, Matt? We're all over the city.
We're doing lots of different things right now. We have one project in Harlem called Loft 124, which is about 52,000 square feet loft building, which we did as market rate luxury, very high-end condos.
Now this is on 124th Street between
Lenox and Adam Clayton Powell. And we are almost done with construction there. We've sold about 75% of the units, and for numbers that we never thought were possible when we first conceived of the project, but that market has really turned around quite a bit.
What happened to that market? Because you also have a property, what, a couple doors down?
Next
We're
block.
neighbors.
Same
Next block.
street, next block.
Yeah, and where are you? You're 124th?
Just off the corner of Frederick Douglass, between Frederick Douglass and Adam Clayton.
What happened to that neighborhood? I mean, before Harlem USA, the retail shopping center and the Pathmark, I mean, we were saying prior to the show, there was a question of crime, there was a question of this. Has crime, the reduction in crime, changed the neighborhood and has changed the type of people who are buying and development? Because I remember 10 years ago, people weren't going up to 124th Street in that neighborhood and buying houses, buying $700 a foot.
It's very different now.
Why? What's changed it?
A lot of
is it the change, or is it also the change and the acceptance of the population to go north of 96th Street?
I think that's part of it. A lot of development there. Prices downtown getting so high that they kind of expanded the past borders. People were uncomfortable to go above 96th Street, then above 110th Street, and things have just changed. It's a completely different neighborhood now.
We have a very diverse group of buyers in our building from all different ethnicities and ages, singles and families, and they're all coming to Harlem for one reason, and that's more space for less money. They're just people they're not predominantly people that live in the neighborhood now, but they're priced out of other similar product downtown. And I think the big change is Harlem has become an acceptable neighborhood, whereas maybe 5 years ago it was only acceptable for a very select group of pioneers, and those pioneers started things, and then as more development occurred, it has become viewed as an acceptable neighborhood. People used to be scared to go up there, and now they're no longer scared, and they realize that it's not such a bad neighborhood after all, and I think they're buying into the future. They realize what's going on, they realize that it's improving every day, and they want to be a part of it.
Michael, you're on 118th and 2nd. What are you building over there?
So we're building at the time, the first building since the rezoning of 2nd Avenue up in that corridor took place. We're building 28-unit residential, very high-end luxury as well. The differentiating point for our property is that we elected, given the availability of a 421A scenario, whereby the common charges and carrying costs for the ultimate end tenants were to be lower, to go with a doorman and a high-end gym and terraces on every unit. And we found that made a tremendous amount of difference. In terms of what the catalyst for change in the area was, I think it's sort of several-fold. Firstly, there's definitely been a conscious undertaking from a younger generation, who a lot of our buyers are, that the boundary of 96th Street is not specifically relevant to them anymore. They've seen the diminution of crime, and they've seen the neighborhood improve. And one of the big things that's driven them up there is an understanding of the shift in what I'll call the rental matrix. It's very hard to find any condo property in Manhattan whereby, other than the cost of your down payment, you can basically make money. Even if it's only $100 or $200 a month, you can make money in today's rental market in East Harlem, buying in our building. If you live there for a year or two and then you move on, the rental market as it stands now is strong enough to see positive cash flow from your investment. And seeing as that situation doesn't exist anywhere else in Manhattan, we've seen a lot of young people looking to buy their first property and a lot of investors who are looking for a situation where they can be cash flow positive.
So I'm listening to you. You're saying that a large profile of your purchasers are young, or certain of these purchasers are purchasing these things as investments, correct?
I mean, I'd say there's definitely been some investments. Most are planning on living there, but it's been young.
Now, my question, which I'll say to all three of you, all of these developments that you've done in Harlem or in certain parts north of 96th Street have been fueled by what we call the 421A tax abatement. And as many people read in my article last week in The Sun, the city, you know, who's done a great job, they are thinking of changing the exclusion zone, which would get rid of the 421As. Now, when somebody buys an apartment in your building, or in your building, or your building, you know, even though the price, they say, what's my monthly going to cost, okay? And when they can get a 15-year tax abatement up in Harlem, they say, hey, you know, if it's $40 a month or if it's $1,000 a month, something has to give, right? What effect is this? I mean, right now your developments are in process, but there are other products that you might be building. And if you can't get into the ground before next December 28th with this foundation or your plans, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Am I correct?
Enormous disadvantage. I think maybe 60 to 80% of buyers in my buildings would not be buying without the 421A.
I agree. I think it's funny, the price of land is going to change, and it's not sure, there's not a set date, but it's that date where developers are looking at a piece of land and saying, if I buy it today, will I get in the ground in time to get the 421A, or will I not? And once we cross that date, I think you're going to see the land prices are going to have to drop.
I tend to agree. I think both a low interest rate environment together with programs like 421A have been able to create sort of a boon for landowners in terms of selling out to developers if they don't want to build themselves. But there's definitely going to be a diminution in pricing, just because given where build costs are, it's very difficult to make a deal pencil out.
You know, but another interesting, the show that I did the week before, we were talking, we had certain seasoned guys who were in this business, and we were talking about a show I did a couple of months ago, and I had some major lenders, and Rob Rosani still remembers the comment that Bank of America said, and Helaba Bank. They said, will you lend to certain developers? And they said, if they don't have enough experience, we're not going to let them test with my money. And the capital markets today, I don't know if you've incurred this, but over the last 2.5 weeks, the capital markets are terrible. You cannot get 10-year money. There is a major problem. You know, Norfolk Bank is going to change. A lot of lenders are changing. Have you seen this have an effect on your type of borrowing for new projects?
I haven't been affected by that personally because I have good relationships, but I have talked to the bankers and I know that things are tightening up quite a bit. And it's exactly what they said on your show, that if they don't have a track record, if they don't have experience, it's going to be very tough to get money.
I haven't been out in the market in the last 2 weeks with any deals, but I have not. For me, it's getting easier as we're getting more experience.
Right, because you're more experienced and you're getting older and you have some more projects.
I was able to finance 124th Street and a new product that had never been built there before. I think from there, everything else will be easier.
No, but I think part of the situation is you're dealing with banks, regular banks, a human, as opposed to the securitization in the conduit world, where the loan is booked, they sell it to a servicer, the servicer then puts it around there. But, you know, there's a different case. I'm hearing a lot about Harlem, but there, you know, you're building
Tribeca also.
Tribeca.
We're a lot of things in the Village. And
Up in northern Manhattan and looking in the Upper East Side at another deal now as well.
So what are you seeing over there, and what kind of properties are you building, and what kind of properties is the demand from the purchaser? I mean, that's part of my question.
For me, we have a kind of niche market where we're really specializing in very high-end product, high-end finishes, everything absolute top of the line. That's a small niche market for us. It's a market that we tested in Harlem with a small project.
This is a great, cute story. A couple years ago, I had Ken Horn of Alchemy Partners on, and we were talking about the Viking stove. And he said he went back into this apartment a year later, and to the person, and he walked in and he opened up the stove, and the guy who bought the apartment, the stove was used for the guy's shirts. It was storage. So in a way, do these people, I know it's nice to say, I got a Viking stove, I have this. I mean, my wife, who will watch this show, we have a GE oven, convection, that she has no idea how to use the convection oven. And I have no idea. I mean, are these amenities, are these special things needed? I mean, Sub-Zero, I know, that's the world. It's profile, GE, Sub-Zero, everything else. Do we need all this? I mean, is that what they want?
some people do and some people don't. And I think the difference is, years ago when you had that show, we were in a condo market that maybe it was $700 a square foot. But when you're doing a downtown project, and now if you want to sell it for $1,500 a square foot, to go from one level of finish to another, maybe it's an extra $50 a square foot. How much more does it cost to do a Viking stove than the G profile? It's probably, what, 50 cents a square foot for the whole apartment. But when you're trying to beef it up,
a hot point, you know?
I think they're going extinct in New York. If you're trying to beef up your sales prices, we have a similar focus to Jeff, where we really do a true luxury product. And our basic business model is to maybe spend an extra $100 a square foot and get $300 back per square foot on the sales price.
And what is the profile of the purchaser in the developments you're doing? You know, you have Harlem, you have the Village, you have Tribeca, you have East Side. Who's buying? You know, and I have my comment I'll have in a second. But who's buying? Is it the yup? There's no more yuppie. It's what's the new term? Echo boomer. It's the echo boomer. Okay, is it the echo boomer buying?
I mean, I think that's definitely been I mean, I hadn't heard the term echo boomer till now, but it's definitely been a major component of who's been a buyer up there. I think a lot of it are former renters, people who have sort of achieved enough net worth to be able to come up with a down payment and still have a comfortable level of savings, and have decided to make the plunge into the buyer's market instead. So I think that they are of the age of echo boomers, but I think a lot of what's driving it is people who are very bullish, like we are. I mean, for example, at the Ivy, we have multiple buyers who are in the 25 to 32 range who are living in rentals.
I hate to say something. How many of these, it's like the people when I do shows in Murray Hill. Murray Hill is like a college campus. I still remember going about a year and a half ago on the Jewish High Holidays, the service. I met somebody at the temple, and he was here from Atlanta, and he said he's here because his daughter was over here. I said, where does she live? She lives in Murray Hill. He says, you know, I said, how's she affording to live in Murray Hill? He said, you know what, I paid 4 years of tuition in Tulane. I'm giving another year's of tuition to pay for the rental. Is that the situation? Is it the mommy and daddies, or are these kids working there? I mean, how are they coming up with this down payment?
There's three trends that are going on that I think are driving this market in Manhattan. One is, it used to be that people would come to New York after they finished school, they would work here for a few years, then they'd get married and move out to the suburbs. Now they're not moving out anymore, they're staying put. And those people want to buy apartments. They don't want to be, long-term renters. Another trend is you have a lot of suburban people who are empty nesters, who their kids are gone, they have this giant house and it's just two of them, they don't want to take care of the house, and they're bored. And they want to come back into Manhattan, they want to be where there's some interesting things going on and they don't have to worry about the maintenance of a house. So that's another trend. And then you have a lot of international money that's pouring in, a combination of just globalization and everybody wanting to be here as a major center of the world, as well as the dollar being so weak that it may seem expensive for us.
I agree with you on all three, but who of that category, who's buying in your developments?
I'm having a completely different clientele than Michael. I'm doing two projects in Harlem simultaneously. One is a loft building where the smallest apartment is 2,100 square feet or 2,000 square feet. The
smallest is 2,000. What's the largest?
3,700. And
like a house?
Yeah, it is. Well, this particular apartment absolutely is like a house. The lowest priced apartment in the building is $1,150,000. I think it's the only building north of 110th that prices start over $1 million. And I've got a completely different, no first time. Well, there are a few first time home buyers, but they're older. I have a Supreme Court judge. The conductor from a South American Philharmonic wanted an apartment there. I have a producer from an HBO producer. A couple of other people, a rock and folk singer, songwriters.
So you're having a different profile than some of what Matt said. And what do you see in your profile?
Well,
I'm sorry.
I have one other building with smaller units, and I find that I'm getting those first-time buyers with the one-bedroom apartments only, but the 2- and 3-bedroom also, an older crowd, a more professional crowd, and they are coming from everywhere and from all walks of life. A lot from Europe. An Icelandic couple just bought. Have some Asian people, a number of Europeans are there, quite a few people, professionals from Harlem, and a number from downtown. An elderly couple selling on Madison Avenue in the 80s, moving up to Harlem.
Matt?
I would say for Loft 124, our profile is very similar to Jeff's, where we have pretty similar properties. The townhouse, we're doing these sort of a niche market of high-end townhouses in the West Village, where the profile is very different. And the price point is very different also. We're shooting at price points in the $10 million range.
Right, but there's a townhouse. But you were talking prior to the show, you're doing something in Mulberry Street.
Right.
And what do you project? What is it going to be, the Echo Boomer in Mulberry Street, or?
I think so. That is a very unique location because it's right on Mulberry Street. It's right in the heart of Little Italy. And I think it's not
Great
really...
opportunity for restaurants.
It's well, we have a restaurant there that I think...
in the building?
Yeah, yeah. I think almost every storefront on the street is a restaurant.
So it's like the instantaneous Fresh Direct, as opposed to Fresh Direct. You have, you can have delivery from
Linguini Direct.
Linguini Direct.
I think because that's a very niche market, niche block. it's not really a family location. I don't think a lot of families want to live there. And the price point, if we were going to do big units, might be $3 to $5 million. And for some people who are in that price point, they may not want to be right on Mulberry Street. So our plan for this particular building is to design small units around 1,000 square feet and have them as mainly 1 and 2 bedrooms.
Well, I think in terms of the tenant mix, we have had several UN representatives who have looked up in the Ivy, who have been in, I guess, the 30-year-old set, and so that's been a major component. But I think in terms of what Jeff was just saying, there's definitely a major component, which is unit mix. And one thing I would have changed had I drawn plans from scratch, I would have carried our lower floor plans a little further up the building, more 1-bedrooms. Because despite the fact that the 2s are selling well and we're getting the numbers that we need to and we're very pleased with sales, we definitely had quicker traction on the 1-bedrooms. And so from a dollar per square foot perspective, I think we probably would have made a little more money had we made more 1-bedrooms, real 1-bedrooms as opposed to claustrophobic, a one with a real living room kitchen. I think that we probably would have done a little better. I mean, that said, it's gone great, but that unit mix and that specific size unit I think is very important.
How do guys like you or other young developers, I'm continuing to keep you in the same category, okay, how do you, I mean, everybody is looking for land. How do you win the beauty contest to buy this property? I mean, it's not easy. I mean, we're the gorilla, my company, we're the gorilla, as one would say. The true 800-pound gorilla, but you know, we deal with guys like you. We want you as partners. How do you find these deals? I mean, what do you walk the streets every day of the night to look for developments?
Well, one particular project that we've been working on for some time, which is currently shelved, which is on the middle of the Upper East Side, is sort of the needle in the haystack mentality of really thinking a bit outside the box. There's an interesting deal that just sold at 305 East 85th Street, which involved the air rights over one building on 85th Street and 2 buildings on 2nd Avenue. We're looking at another building on 2nd Avenue a little bit further up, but still on the Upper East Side, where we've managed to put together a basis of about $260 a buildable foot. And that involved buying air rights.
Much cheaper than that they paid on 405.
Absolutely.
That was $425 a square foot.
And so that involved 4 air rights packages from different owners.
Right, but what I'm saying is, how do you make a decision? The townhouses, as we just said before, that's a specialty buyer. I mean, what you guys have done in Loft 124 and the other properties in Harlem is another buyer. I mean, in today's market, with what I just said, with the changes in the 421A and with other situations, it's difficult. How do you? Nobody has a crystal ball, and you know the worst problem that we have in the business is, and I don't consider myself a member of the press, is the press and the perception of them saying that the world is coming to an end. And in November, there was a difficult time. Wasn't it slower?
Got a little bit slow, yeah, but not too bad. We love you in the press, Mike.
Right, I know. but what about now? I mean, how are sales today? What are we seeing today? Are sales good? Are a lot of people walking in there? Are people... Here's my real question. I did a show a couple months ago. I had Alan Goldman from SJP Residential. He's building something on 37th Street and Park Avenue and 46th Street and 8th Avenue. 2 totally different neighborhoods. And he said people who come into both buildings walk around with like 22 different brochures. They used to go for a specific neighborhood.
I love that. I love when that happens for me, because we are, well, with one exception, we really knock the pants off every bit of competition. And when they've...
You're giving credit to your competition on 124th Street.
Yeah, great building.
They clearly
Terrific.
haven't seen ours.
Okay. But anyway, I love when they come in from other, with other projects. When the brokers who are selling our stuff go to other projects, people are saying, oh, there's a person from Soho North.
But
from
what
50
I'm
West.
saying to you is this. I remember maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when somebody said, I want to be in Tribeca, or I want to be in East Village. That's where they wanted to be, you know, and I think the guys who were on my show, the Ken Horns in the world, they'd say, hey, within 3 days, everybody came to my building. That's all they wanted to be on that Chelsea neighborhood or this and that. Today, it seems that, especially if you pick up the New York Times, I mean, the greatest thing that's happened to New York Times and New York Magazine is, thank God for all these condos, so they're making money in these advertisements. But people they're looking. It seems to me, is my perception correct?
Well, they are looking. I found it to be a little bit slow between just recently with holiday season, tax time, but things have really picked up for us now. On the building we have on 127th Street, 50 West, it's a 23-unit ground up, and we've sent out 5 contracts in the last 5 days. So that's really nice.
Yeah,
And it was about
all
3-4
I hear
weeks where
from,
we had nothing.
unfortunately, all I hear from the three of you, and my show the week before when we went to other boroughs, I only hear Manhattan. Have you ever thought of venturing? I mean, you grew up in West Hempstead, I heard. Okay, I mean, I'm not saying go to West Hempstead, which is a nice community, but I'm saying, have you thought of Brooklyn? Brooklyn is very hot. Have you thought of everybody? There's too much building in my own mind in Williamsburg, but you know, there's Brooklyn, there's the Bronx, there's Queens. There is something called Staten Island, but I mean,
Heard of it?
You've heard of it?
Yeah, I'm looking at a few sites in Long Island City and Astoria. That area I like a lot. Brooklyn for me, downtown, I think it's overpriced now, and I'm from Brooklyn also. I grew up there, so I'm a little. I have some
I grew
resistance.
up there. I
to-
love it. Okay.
We bid on stuff all over the city. We have one building in Brooklyn, but that's just a rental repositioning. But we bid on stuff in Brooklyn regularly, and even had one of my guys out in Staten Island last week. So we look everywhere.
Michael?
We've looked at many projects in Long Island City and a few in Brooklyn as well. But for us, I mean, a large part of our focus is also our sort of bread and butter business, which is multifamily residential. So to that effect, we've been most bullish on Manhattan only because of how much some of the formerly blighted neighborhoods in Manhattan have appreciated.
What about Long Island City? You know, you said you've been looking. You know, I'm probably, when I write for the press, I'm one of the most positives about Long Island City. But the other day I was riding over the 59th Street Bridge and I see something called the Fusion. And I joke with my wife, I said, you know, if I had a job with shadow traffic, that would be a great location because you can see the traffic. I mean, there's Long Island City and there's Long Island City. You know, they're a different thing. The water is one neighborhood and there are others. You know, one still has to remember that the Rikers Island bus does stop on Queens Boulevard. Okay, you know, so there's a different category. You know, and we don't have much time. But if you had the opportunity to find property, would you prefer to be in Long Island City or Astoria? And I'm asking in general, and we only have like a minute. Long Island City, Astoria, or Williamsburg?
Williamsburg is overpriced. I think Long Island City and Astoria for me.
I agree.
Okay, I think that it's hard, but we've completed a half an hour. I would like to thank my 3 developers. We're not going to call it the young developers, even though 2 of them are very young, for being here today. I'd like to thank, and we're going to thank Jeff Bennett, the oldest of the developers, but a great guy who's been on panels with me, principal of R&B Development, Matt Blesso, president of Blesso Properties, and last but not least, the kid over here, who we'll have back again, Michael Davis of KG Plymouth, for being on the show. Next week, I think we're going to be talking about specialty lenders, and hope to see you next week. Thank you very much.
Major funding for these programs is provided by HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, Greenberg Traurig LP, the Moynihan Group. Additional funding is provided by Antares Real Estate, Arbor Realty Trust, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Habitats, Cushman & Wakefield, Essex Capital Partners, Fremont Investment and Loan, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Must Development LLC, NEWMARK Knight Frank, PALIN Enterprises, Rosenthal & Rosenthal Inc., Signature Bank, Stonehenge Partners, Swig Equities, the Engel Berman Group, the WITKOFF Group, Titan Capital, YL Real Estate Developers.